Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man! Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I concur with the Prime Minister's remarks concerning Remembrance Sunday and Remembrance Weekend. We mourn all those that have died in all wars, and surely we also resolve to try and build a peaceful future where the next generation doesn't suffer from the wars of past generations. Last week, I asked the Prime Minister the same question 6 times, Mr. Speaker, and he couldn't answer. He's now had a week to think about it. I want to ask him one more time. Can he guarantee that next April nobody is going to be worse off as a result of cuts to working tax credits?
Let me be absolutely clear with the honourable gentleman. What I can guarantee next April is there will be an £11,000 personal allowance, so you can earn £11,000 before you pay tax. What I can guarantee is there will be a national living wage at £7.20, giving the lowest paid in our country a £20 a week pay rise compared with the election next year. Now, on the issue of tax credits, we suffered the defeat in the House of Lords, so we've taken the proposals away. We are looking at them. We will come forward with new proposals in the autumn statement, and at that point, in exactly 3 weeks' time, I'll be able to answer his question. Now, if he wants to spend the next 5 questions asking it all over again, I'm sure he'll find that it is very entertaining and interesting. How it fits with the new politics, I'm not quite sure. But over to you.
Mr. Speaker, this isn't about entertainment. This is about... This is not funny for people who are desperately worried about what's going to happen next April. If the Prime Minister won't listen to the questions I put, won't listen to the questions that are put by the public, then perhaps the Prime Minister will listen to a question that was raised by his honourable friend, the member for Brigham Goole, who last week, concerning tax credit changes, said, and I quote, that changes cannot go ahead next April and that any mitigation should be full mitigation. What's the Prime Minister's answer to his friend?
It's very much the same answer that I gave to him. In 3 weeks' time, we will announce our proposals and he will be able to see what we'll do to deliver the high-pay, low-tax, lower welfare economy we want to see. That's what we need in our country. We're cutting people's taxes, we're increasing people's pay, but we also believe it's right to reform welfare. So he'll have his answer in 3 weeks' time, but meantime, he has to think about this. If we don't reform welfare, how are we going to fund the police service that we're talking about today? How are we going to fund the health service that we could be talking about today? How are we going to pay for the defence forces that we're talking about today? The honourable gentleman has been completely consistent. He's opposed every single reform to welfare that has ever come forward. If we'd listened to him, you'd still have families in London getting £100,000 a year in housing benefit. So the answer to the question is you'll find out in 3 weeks' time. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that the Prime Minister makes choices, and he's made a choice concerning working tax credits which hasn't worked very well so far. But he must be aware. I give him an example. A serving soldier, a private in the army with 2 children and a partner, would lose over £2,000 next April. I ask a question.
The questions will be heard, and the answers will be heard. Simple as that.
Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Surely that is the whole point of our Parliament, that we're able to put questions to those in authority. And so I have a question from... I have a question from Kieran, a veteran of the First Gulf War. His family are set to lose out, and he writes, "It's a worry to the family. There's fear and trepidation about whether we're going to be able to get by." And he asks, is this how the government treats veterans of the armed services?
Well, first of all, let me take the case of the serving soldier. First of all, many soldiers, indeed I think all soldiers, will benefit from the £11,000 personal allowance that comes in next year. That means they'll be able to earn more money before they even start paying taxes. Serving soldiers that have children will benefit from the 30 hours of childcare. And of course, serving soldiers and others will be able to see our proposals on tax credits in exactly 3 weeks' time. But what I would say to the serving soldier is that he is now dealing with an opposition party, the leader of which said he couldn't see any use for UK forces anywhere in the world at any time. That serving soldier wouldn't have a job if the honourable gentleman ever got anywhere near power.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I invite the Prime Minister to cast his mind to another area of public service that is causing acute concern at the present time? I note he's trying to dig himself out of a hole with the junior doctors' offer this morning, which we await the detail of. But there is a question that I want to put to him, and I quote Dr. Cliff Mann, the President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, who said, "This winter will be worse than last winter." And last winter was the worst winter we've ever had in the NHS. Can the Prime Minister guarantee there will be no winter crisis in the NHS this year?
First of all, when it comes to the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, they actually support what we're saying about a 7-day NHS and the junior doctors' contract. He says wait for the detail. I would urge everyone in this House, and I'd urge all junior doctors who are watching this, to go on the Department of Health website and look at the pay calculator, because you'll be able to see there that no one working legal hours will lose out in any way at all. This is an 11% basic pay rise, and what it will deliver is a stronger and safer NHS. Now, as for the state of our NHS more generally, it is benefiting from £10 billion that we put in, money that the Labour Party at the last election said they did not support. So I believe the NHS has the resources that it needs, and that's why we're seeing it treating more patients with more treatments, more drugs being delivered, more tests being carried out. It's a much stronger NHS, and the reason is simple, because we have a strong economy supporting our strong NHS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I note that the Prime Minister has not offered any comment whatsoever about the winter crisis of last year or what will happen this year. Now, there is Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition is entitled to ask questions without a barrage of noise, and the Prime Minister is entitled to answer questions without a barrage of noise. That is what the public is entitled to expect. Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister won't answer questions that I put, then I quote to him the renowned King's Fund, which has enormous expertise in NHS funding and NHS administration, and I quote, "The National Health Service cannot continue to maintain standards of care and balance the books. A rapid and serious decline in patient care is inevitable unless something is done." Can I ask the Prime Minister, which is rising faster, NHS waiting lists or NHS deficits?
Well, First of all, let me deal directly with the King's Fund. What we've done on this side of the House is appoint a new chief executive to the NHS, Mr. Simon Stevens, who worked under the last Labour government and did a very good job for them. He produced the Stevens plan that he said required at least £8 billion of government funding, and we're putting in £10 billion behind that plan. That is the plan that we're producing, and the results you can see is that we've got 1.3 million more operations, 7.8 million more outpatient appointments, 4.7 million more diagnostic tests. What is going up in the NHS is the number of treatments, is the number of successful outcomes. And if he wants to know who is heading for a winter crisis, I would predict that it's the Labour Party that is heading for a winter crisis. We've seen it a lot. Look at his appointments. Look at his appointments. His media advisor is a Stalinist. His new policy advisor is a Trotskyist. And his economic advisor is a communist. If he's trying to move the Labour Party to the left, I'd give him full marks.
Mr. Speaker, the issue that I raised with the Prime Minister was the National Health Service. In case he'd forgotten, I'd just like to remind him that since he took office in 2010, the English waiting list is up by a third. There are now 3.5 million people waiting for treatment in the NHS. If this party can't match its actions by its words, then I put this to him. Will he just get real? The NHS is in a problem. It's in a problem of deficits in many hospitals. It's in a problem of waiting lists. It's in a problem of the financial crisis that's been faced with so many others. Can he now address that issue and ensure that everyone in this country can rely on the NHS, which is surely the jewel in all of our crowns?
He talks about the health service since I became Prime Minister. Let me tell him what has happened in the NHS since I became Prime Minister. The number of doctors up by 10,500. The number of nurses up by 5,800. Fewer patients waiting more than 52 weeks to start treatment than under Labour. And we've introduced the Cancer Drugs Fund, and we've seen mixed-sex wards virtually abolished, and we've seen rates of MRSA and hospital-acquired infection come plummeting down. That's what's happened. But it's happened for a reason. Because we've had a strong economy, because we've got some of the strongest growth anywhere in the world, because we've got unemployment coming down, because we've got inflation on the floor, we're able to fund an NHS. Whereas the countries he admires all over the world, with their crazy socialist plans, cut their health service and hurt the people that need the help the most.
That's all, folks.